is 10 things in Diablo 4 I would change right now. What's up, guys? It's your boy Mads. We're going to jump into this video right now. Starting off, number 1 is going to be the easiest thing to change, and we're going to go all the way through to 10, which I think is going to be the hardest and longest thing to change. So number 1, we're going to start off, of course, with the stash tab. We all know this is a problem. Ever since day 1, this has been a problem. And the reason why this is a problem is because we can't just save legendaries now and our gems and our uniques. We also have to start saving the aspects, which really tightens up the space of the stash. And we're going to go through what I would do to change this system around to something a little bit better and allow the stash tab to breathe a bit more. I don't see why this is an issue, because they found out this was an issue in Diablo 3 and they gave us more stash tabs from like 5, 6, 7 stash tabs. They knew we love to hoard gear, good gear, and change gear and blah, 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 with all this other gear. And so having 4 stash tabs in this game is kind of weird to me, but hey. Number 2, the ability to change loadouts. This is in Diablo 3 as well. This was a great feature in Diablo 3 and have no idea why this isn't in Diablo 4. But what you would do, you go to your wardrobe and there would be your gear here. Then you would save your gear, you would save your skill tree into one tab, let's say main. And then you'd put your speed build on, jump over to your speed build. You would save the gear, you would save the skills in the speed build. And then you'd be able to switch between those builds whenever you wanted to, and it made farming so much more efficient. Number 3, as you probably guessed it, the Paragon tree. Why do we have a refund button for all of our skills, but there isn't one in the Paragon tree? We have 60 skills in the skill tree, but we have over 300 skills in the Paragon tree that we can't refund. What? So I have to sit here and mess around with a new build and have to click each one of these individually to change my build. Like Blizzard White, please give me a refund button for my Paragon tree. It's just Number 4, I want to talk about mob density. You've probably gone through this as well, running through dungeons, and the first 30 seconds of the dungeon is you just walking from the door all the way to your first mob. This is not how we want it. We want that dungeon to be filled with mobs. Especially, we're level 100. Like, where are the mobs? That I want to go through that door and I want to be being absolutely nuked from the start of the dungeon all the way to the end of the dungeon. I want that dungeon to be jam-packed, filled with mobs, because I'm not grinding XP at this point. It doesn't affect me. And yes, it will affect lower level players, but then just reduce the amount of XP that you get from mobs and put more mobs in, so it equals to the same amount of XP per dungeon. I don't think it's that hard by just cramming the dungeon filled with mobs, just blowing them up left, right, and center, and having a great time doing it with your build, your friends, whatever. Just blowing up a load of monsters is what this game is about. Allow me to do it. Number 5. Now, this is where we start to move on to more of the advanced kind of section of this video and what I would like from the aspects and how they work. I think going to the dungeons and clearing the dungeons from like your level 0 to try and get the aspects at the start is a great idea. I love it. There's a focus reward from that specific dungeon and you're like, great, I've got that reward now. Now I can put that on my gear when I'm level 25. Here's my issue with the system. So it gives you the lowest roll, which is completely fine. You've done a dungeon, gives you lowest roll, you got something, put it on your gear, fantastic, crack on with it, right? We're farming, in and out of dungeons to try and get those legendaries. That's fine. The game wants you to farm. But once that legendary drops, then it's a max roll of the aspect. And now we're kind of worried about putting it on our gear, because then we're going to put it on our gear. And then what about if a new staff drops later? We want to put that on the gear. So we never end up using that aspect because we're just going to save it for the next best drop. That max roll could just stay in your inventory because you're kind of like too worried about using it because you think like you're never going to get it again, if that made sense. How do we solve that? This is how I would go about it. You give them to the occultist and then he upgrades your low roll, 20% armor, for instance. That comes from the dungeon. You go into another dungeon, you get a drop. It gives you a 50% roll of armor. And then you go to the occultist and it upgrades to 20% to 50%. And now there's no reason to keep hoarding your aspects in your stash, freeing up your stash space for more gear. You can just give it to the occultist and then it upgrades to the highest role of that aspect. So this is number 6 on what I would change. Take 10 to 20 hours off the level cap, right? It takes like 80 hours. Apparently, if you're efficient, apparently it takes 55 hours or 50 hours to get to the level cap. That's probably like 4-man's dungeons non-stop. Take those hours off of the level cap. It takes so long to get to 100 anyway. Your average player base is not going to get there. According to their last live dev interview, 90% of people haven't even completed the story yet. How are they going to get to 100? Like, yeah, there's no real end game at 100. We'll talk about that later. Bring that cap down so it makes it easier to get to 100. And then it takes that mid-section out of going from 50 to 80 to 100 to 50 to 100. Moving on to number 7, Helltide dungeons. When is a Helltide? A Helltide happens every, what, 2.5 hours, 3 hours? And then when there is a Helltide, there's not really much to look forward to the Helltide, because some of the ones that I've been in recently have been pretty empty, which hasn't been too fun for me to experience. And I don't even get the legendaries now, because I'm just like, meh. I've had quite a bad time with Helltides recently. I'm not really going to jump into them too much. I want them to give me a reason to jump into this Helltide. And that is more mob density, and then Helltide dungeons. Have a Helltide dungeon spawn in super elites 3 to 5 levels above you in that dungeon, and then you can go in that dungeon, you can get some super good loot, get some, you know, gold, whatever, and that dungeon is absolutely jam-packed full of monsters, and you can go for it, just obliterate it, or it be, you know, super challenging, whatever your build is. World bosses. Here it is, the topic of world bosses. And the reason why I put this at number 8 is because what I want to do with world bosses is change them up a bit. They are all the same right now. They're just damage sponges. They just take damage and they die. 30 seconds max that it takes to kill a boss these days, and it takes like 6 hours to spawn. Like why? They don't even drop anything. Allow the bosses to, 1, drop better loot, take longer to kill, like have a bigger HP bar, and then have some bosses do different things. At the moment, they're just damage sponges. All of them. They're all like the same reskinned boss. Just have one be super difficult. Super difficult. And that boss gives you good loot. Like, I don't think it's that difficult to change. Maybe some mechanics, maybe like a remodel. You have one guy who tanks a load of damage. Use your numbers. Then your next boss does crazy fire damage, and there's just fire everywhere, and there's like mortars coming in like the Helltide. Or there's a freezing boss, and it's just like freeze, and you can't really do anything. Very difficult. But that boss will drop a lot of good loot, and it will be targeted loot, so that he's got more of a chance to drop the Frostburn Gauntlet. So I think there should be a lot more different types of bosses in the game that are harder and easier to slay, instead of them all being the same. Number 9. Now, this is difficult because we all say this. We've been doing the same content over and over and over again since level 50. Because the game's content right now is between 50 and 80. You want to get to 0 to 50 as fast as you can to get into World Tier 3, to when you can do the events and loot starts dropping more, and there's more mobs and it's more difficult, and it's just an overall better level than World Tier 2. And then you'll get more drops, which means it's faster from World Tier 3 to World Tier 4. And that's kind of your goal, is World Tier 4, because that's where everything drops, right? So we want to go to World Tier 4 as fast as we can. And we want there to be things in World Tier 4 that give everyone something to do. But there's nothing to do, because we've done everything that there is to do in World Tier 4 in World Tier 3. And we've been doing dungeons since the start of the game. We just push dungeons, we do bosses, we push dungeons, we do bosses, we push dungeons, we do bosses. And that's completely fine. Like, it is a Diablo game. But I do want, as a more modern player, especially with like PoE, Lost Ark, all those kind of games that have like end tier kind of content, I would like that to be in the game. I understand that the game is only like a month old. That stuff may be coming into the game, and we do have Uber Lilith to try and kill. It's a good fight, but it's I want more. I want more of those fights. Maybe they are coming, but I'd like more end game content like that. More style of Uber Lilith bosses that drop unique gear, or like super legendary gear, or can drop a chance to give you a something that you can put on your weapon that will just max roll the stats on that gear. Super low roll, but it would give you a reason to go farm that boss over and over and over and over and over and yeah, you know what I mean. So they give you things that allow you to improve the end game content. And as well, this comes from Diablo 3. Diablo 3 has something called GR, which is greater rifts. These rifts are timed with leaderboards. They may be coming in season 2. We don't know yet. They haven't really said anything about it. In GR, there's no loot, nothing like that. It all comes at the end of the dungeon. They're like, wait, what the fuck? No loot? No, that's fine. Because we want to run through the dungeon. It's about how fast you can get through the dungeon and stay alive. And the highest you can get starts getting more and more challenging, right? So you run through the dungeon, you kill all the mobs, and you get to the end. And you're like, okay, cool. That was a great one. I'm going to go upper keystone. Do it again, upper keystone, do it again, upper keystone, do it again. And it'll give you a little bit more reason to do dungeons as well, because it adds that time limit, adds that little bit of pressure on you instead of just like walking through the nightmare, 60s, 70s, just trying to upgrade your keystones when all of mine are upgraded. Another one of my friends said that, and I think it's a great thing to implement into the game. Number 10. This works two ways, okay? If they don't want to rework the entire skill tree, which I understand, kind of a lot of effort, but we did pay for the game, so we kind of deserve it, but whatever. Legendary drops. I think there should be more legendary drops in the game that change your abilities and allow them to do different things. Obviously, the werebear right now has the helmet that changes earth skills into werebear skills. That's good. That's great. But I would like more of those things in the gear. Like maybe werewolf skills are now werebear skills, and werebear skills are now werewolf skills. And then you could be able to change a bit of gear. Is that now your werewolf, you stay in werewolf form, but now it's the different skills. You're now a werebear doing like max crit rolls because he's using werewolf skills, right? So I think those things kind of need to be added into the game, like more of them for all the different classes as well. Like your frost damage is now fire damage. I think that the skill tree should be part of the Paragon tree, and then you add nodes to the Paragon tree as you go through the levels. And it works similar to the current Paragon system. So when you level up, you get 4 points. You'll be able to put into the tree, which then you'd be able to level up. Either like you level up your basic attacks, which then you get via glyphs, and your glyph you can add to your basic attack. And then you can choose which direction you'd want to go on your basic attack. And then your basic attack does fire damage. Your basic attack is an earth skill. Your basic attack is a poison skill. And then you'd be able to get your glyph and put that into that socket and be like, okay, now my poison damage of basic attacks does 20% extra damage. And then you go off that node into core skills, and then you drag your glyph into the core skill. And then you can choose via the glyph what core skill that is going to be. So the glyphs will drop when attacking minions and just generally elites. And then your core skill is now landslide pillars, does whatever. You'd be able to upgrade it, doing more damage. And then you'd be able to select what tree you'd want to go off of. So let's say this was our core skill, and then this one was like core skills deal 20% extra damage. And then you'd be able to go up here. Instead of it just being in the Paragon tree, it would be in the skill tree. And then you can work towards something, and you can kind of really customize how your character works. Yes, I get it. It's a little bit more complicated, and it starts to kind of add into, it starts to venture over to more PoE and the complexity of the PoE skill tree. I want to put my time into making a build that is good and that I can really call mine, probably like a lot of you out there as well. It is kind of more complex, but I actually think it's better for the game to make it a little bit more complex, because you allow the hardcore players to enjoy the hardcore part, and you also allow the softcore players to experiment more with builds and playing with builds and seeing if things are any good. And that's kind of the fun of the game. It's about experimenting with builds, seeing if it's any good, jumping into dungeons and slaying monsters. Guys, let me know what you think about my top 10. If you agree or disagree with anything in there, let me know in the comment section below, or what you would change within the overall game to improve your experience with it. Just let me know, and we can have a chat about it. Like, that's always fun. Yeah, guys, if you like the video, like it, and if you ain't subscribed yet, then what are you doing, bro? In a bit, guys. Bye.